the one thing I did was several years ago. I honestly, I Googled. I used that crazy thing called Google, and I Googled old strong men and old time wrestlers, like from late 1800s, early 1900s. And I saw a picture of George Hackenschmidt. And that, if you've not seen a picture of George Hackenschmidt, that guy and Farmer Burns and a couple of other guys, I saw pictures of them, and I was like, these guys look amazing. Like, it was long before there was anything in regards to knowing anything about protein or carbs or, anything like that. And they looked amazing. And I thought, I'm going to start training like they do. And I found by chance there's this, they've changed the website now, but it's called goldenageofstrongmen.com. It's a British website. And it could be also under the term, the name Golden Age of Ironmen.com. And at the time that I found it, they had actually the training manuals that some of these guys wrote, like George Hackenschmidt and Louis Cyr, and remember Charles Atlas?
Of course.
Yeah. And
so they had, I should have got my money back.
But they had all of those training manuals, and you could download them and you could read them. And so I started doing those things that those guys did. I started training the way they do. And then that was it.
I want to ask you about your training, but did I see a video of you doing the Sheik's clubs one time?
Oh yeah. I use clubs and I use maces, and that stuff
just to put over the clubs. Henry Gobbin but especially back in the day, was a bear of a man,
He was a monster.
I saw him one day. He got the clubs in the garden, and he kind of goes into a room by himself trying to figure out if he could use them or not. But it was his first time. That as big and strong as Henry was, he couldn't do them very well. So kudos to you for he would have figured it out, but he didn't. It was funny because he went into a private room so that nobody would see him.
And then when I started reading up on the old time strongman routines, the primary thing that they did was that they didn't work individual body parts per day or anything like that. They trained from head to toe every time they trained, and they looked at it more like practice, no different than like if you were to practice baseball or football. They practice the technique of lifting as opposed to just trying to train a particular muscle group or something. And I changed. That was the biggest thing that changed for me, was that I started training that way.
What were their main exercises?
The main thing, one of the I forget which, I think it might have been Hackenschmidt I read, and he stated in his training manual that if you can only train 3 days a week, there are only 3 parts of your body you should always train, and that is, number 1, most important, are your legs. Number 2 is your back, and number 3 is your hands. And that was it.
Your hands.
Yes, because without your hands, you can't pick things up. You can't maintain, and you can't properly move heavy weights. Because remember, back then they didn't have straps. They didn't even have a rack or a bench. So a lot of like there's a Milo, they call it a Milo squat. I've been practicing, which is where you literally put the barbell up on its end and then duck up underneath it, put the bar on your shoulders, and then basically rack it on your shoulders and do the squats, and then set it back down.
And with the Hackensmith also, back in those days in the matches, there was a lot of hand fighting going on too, for positioning.
Yeah, there's a professional wrestler from India, the Great Gama. And I think he was historically, back when wrestling was a shoot and even a semi-shoot, he held the record, had like 300 consecutive matches undefeated or something like that at that time. And his training regiment consisted of lots of everyday squats and everyday what they call the DANs, the push-ups on the Sheena board. It elevates and you do almost like a dive bomber type push up, and then using a mace, training with the maces and the clubs. And that guy was, when you look at him, he's an absolute tank.
He's a beast, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He was
just,
so
you know,
ripped.
guy-
You wonder how these guys back in those days. I mean, great God! I mean, holy cow, that's going way back. But he was just ripped. His body was a modernized body. It's just amazing. Al, with all the workout, I know nutrition had to play a pretty good part in your.
Oh, that did too. I altered how I eat as well. I eat a lot better and I eat a lot more. Contrary to popular belief, the way to lose weight a lot of times is not starving yourself, but actually eating more frequently throughout the day, and and just not per se avoiding carbs, but eating the correct type of carbs and the correct. And I started, following a little bit of more dietary direction that those guys did too, because they would eat anything, but they would eat, and they would eat a lot, and they would eat frequently, and that makes a big difference.
It's interesting how training is going back to that style.
Mm-hmm.
Remember in the 80s,
Yeah.
he had Singletary, who was big on the Nautilus, and guys like
Right.
that, they're going to be in great shape. All they got to do is work hard. And then you
Sure.
had all this other stuff. You've had the CrossFit. Now they're going back to the kettlebells and the barbells and doing the old school lifts that, it's pretty simple. What Arnold and Franco did works tremendously well.
Yeah. And I think Arnold and Franco too were like, Franco was like a practicing strongman. He wasn't just a bodybuilder.
Very strong.
Very, very, very strong. And he was in Arnold. I think people are, when you go back and you watch some of the old films of him training, boy, he was moving a lot of weight. I mean, really was. And remarkably, if you consider the size, his height and the size of his frame, because the smaller, shorter guy is going to, have a little bit of an edge when it comes to those kinds of things. But and Arnold was 6'2" or 6'3", I think. And same with Lou Ferrigno. Lou was 6'4", 6'5", and he was moving, big, heavy weight at that time.
Farmer Burns was the coach of Gotch, for those out there that were, listening to get the progression of coaches down to